Hello and welcome back to TVP World. My name is Alex Simlinsky and these are World Talks. Georgians are going to the polls on Saturday to decide whether to end 12 years of increasingly authoritarian rule in a decisive vote on their push to joining the European Union. Now, some are describing this election as the most crucial vote since Georgians backed independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. And joining us now to discuss this topic further is Shota Gvineria, Economic Policy Research Center of Georgia. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, and thank you for your interest.
So now I'd like to start out by asking, do tell our viewers, what is at stake in these elections?
Well, actually, it is clear now to the Georgian people that what is at stake is Georgia's democratic and European future. I would even go further and say that even Georgia's independence and sovereignty is at stake, because it has become very clear for us in recent months that a clear objective of the Russian Federation is to turn Georgia into another Belarus, and they have proxies in the government of Georgia who are in control of the political resources. They have very powerful tools to manipulate with the public opinion and with the will of the Georgian people. So we are fighting a very difficult uphill battle here against not only the Kremlin's influences, but their actual assets in the government of Georgia.
So now, given what you just said, what do we know about Russian interference in these elections?
Well, actually, if you have a look at the information ecosystem of Georgia for the last couple of years, especially after the brutal invasion of Ukraine, you will see that what the ruling party of Georgia is saying is a literal one-in-one translation from what we hear in Moscow. No, they have been saying that the global party of war, meaning the West, is responsible for this war and not Russia, that actually Russia is not doesn't have to be blamed for this war, because NATO and the United States have instigated the war back in 2008 in Georgia, and now this is the continuation of the same process in Ukraine, which is actually true, but blaming the United States and NATO for that instead of Russia is absolutely something that is coming only from Kremlin. So we have basically seen these narratives of the Georgian Dream Party fully aligned with those of Russia. And we have seen a number of high officials and political leaders actually acting as the direct assets of the Russian Federation. They have been oppressing democratic processes in Georgia. The hate speech and call for violence from high officials of the Georgian Dream Party is a common practice. So what we see in Georgia unfolding for the last more than 2 years is the exact copy of the processes that brought Russia where it is now, with the adoption of the so-called law on foreign agents, with the gradual but quickly escalating deterioration of democracy and the full grip of the ruling party on the state's resources. So there is no clear line between the party and the state anymore. So the party has taken over most of the resources in the country. So whatever people's will is is very difficult to reflect through free and fair elections, because the way these elections are conducted is very similar to what we saw in Belarus and what we have seen in Russian Federation for years.
So now, do you think is a turn towards Russia inevitable?
No, I really don't think so, because Georgia is quite different from other countries in the region. And it's different because more than 80% of the population strongly supports Georgia's European and Euro-Atlantic future. So there has been never question marks on that. If in the other countries there is a public discussion, whether we want European Union or not, or whether the country should join NATO or not. In Georgia, it's very clear. There is this seemingly discussion about whether this current government is able to actually get us, the Georgian people, to the European Union and NATO. And unfortunately, this party succeeded in deceiving many people in thinking that they're going in the right direction, because their narrative before the war broke out in Ukraine, as I said, was overly pro-Western, pro-European. They were saying all the right things that the people wanted to hear. They were saying all the right things that our European partners wanted to hear. But on the ground, the policy was actually doing absolute opposite to what Georgia needed for getting closer to the European Union and NATO. And now it has become apparent for the Georgians, and that is what is the different this time, that Georgian people are no longer deceived, and they understood that in order to fight for their European future, they need to get rid of this regime, because the regime that is under the sanctions from our strategic partners in the West, of course, cannot get us closer to those institutions where we strive to be. So this gives us a lot of hope, because people are so mobilized now. There are no more illusions whether this ruling party will actually drive this country towards Russia or towards the European Union. It's very clear that this country will move towards Russia very quickly if they manage to somehow secure victory in these elections. That's good news that the people understand that and they're mobilized. And if you see the polling stations this morning in Georgia, it's all packed. And that's the first sign of change, when a lot of people come out to the polling stations and there is a high turnout. That's what we see. But on a negative note, as I said, they have all the tools to just outright rig these elections. And what we have heard in the pre-election campaign from them, it's basically is a proof that they're going to do this. So they will try to rig these elections. They will try to manipulate with these elections. But I hope that the people's voice and will be so overwhelmingly against the ruling party that they will not be able to, even by rigging and by manipulating with some vulnerable parts of Georgian society, even with that, they will not be able to secure victory today.
Of course. And now you mentioned crowds at polling stations. What's the atmosphere like in Georgia on this day of these very important elections?
So what we see in Tbilisi and largely in the whole country is that nobody doubts that there is no chance for this ruling party to win these elections through a free and fair electoral process. So everybody, even their supporters, understand that they have lost these elections. Now, the main discussion is about whether they will peacefully and willingly admit this defeat and actually commit to the transfer of power. And that's a separate topic. And we have been observing some not very promising trends in this regard, and we see that these political leaders that are in charge right now are not ready for the peaceful transfer of power. They have been preparing for announcing the manipulated electoral outcomes. We have seen their propaganda channels, pushing this narrative that the only possible outcome of these elections is the victory of the ruling party. They have been employing their own owned and controlled polling organizations, lying to the Georgian people that they have 60% of the popular support, which is, of course, an outright lie. And all the other polling organizations were saying that the support to the ruling party is lurking from 30 to 35%. So this doubled as much support coming through their narrative, which is of course false and lie, is one indication, just one indication in the narrative that they're actually going to announce crooked outcomes of the election. But also, if we see the actions, how they have pushed through civil servants to the Central Election Committee's structures and the people who are actually administering and who will be counting these votes have been selected very carefully from the ranks of the Georgian Dream supporters. So this process will not be easy, and only the overwhelmingly high and loud voice of the Georgian people that will not leave even a single, space, even for that very determined party to rig these elections, will actually be able to vote out this government from the office.
So, given what you just said, do you think if we were to see, like you said, an announcement of this crooked outcome of these elections, might we expect protests in the streets of Georgia?
That's absolutely clear, because Georgian people have demonstrated time and time again that they are ready to fight for their European future. We do not only support our European future, but we are ready to fight for it. And this hundreds of thousands of people have actually demonstrated this for last 2 years in the streets of Tbilisi very clearly. So we have seen a massive demonstration in support of Ukraine. We have seen massive demonstrations against this Russian law on foreign agents. We have seen demonstrations in support of Georgia's candidacy status in the European Union. And of course, these people will not allow anybody to steal their choice and steal the choice of their people, their children, and the future of this country. And the good news, as I said, is that people do realize that this is exactly what is at stake. So we are today going to decide whether Georgia continues moving on its historic path of coming back to the European family. And there is a chance of that. There is a clear chance of that with the candidacy status now and the European Union being as open to discussing, membership process of Georgia as ever. Or on the other side, we will see that this entrenched anti-democratic and anti-Western political party that is trying to drag this country back into Russia's orbit. If they prevail, then we will have two Belarusias instead of one on the peripheries of Europe, and this will not be a good development neither for Georgia nor for the regional security. It will affect, of course, the West's capacity to to support Ukraine, because
All right,
Georgia
and
being
we have to leave it there. However, I'd like to highlight that positive aspect of what you said. Shota, Gvineria, Economic Policy Research Center of Georgia, thank you very much for your insight and for speaking to us here on TVP World this morning.
Thank you for your time. Thanks.
And that's a wrap for this edition of World Talks. But for more interviews like this one, do stay tuned to TVP World.